All right, and we're live. I'm so excited to be here with you today, as we were just so excited in the green room. Um, my name is Elise Craft, and I am on the verge of having sort of some hysteria, but um, I want to welcome you, Mindy. You know how much I love you. This is Mindy Green, and I'm going to do my best to properly introduce you, and then you'll be able to jump in here too. Mindy is a life and parenting and grief coach, and she is a parenting expert and a homeschool expert. And she is one of the co-authors of the book Redefine. And I'm so happy to have you here today. You've been on the show before, but in a different capacity. And today you're here as one of the co-authors of the book. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Hello.
Hello, my dear Elise. I am so happy to be here. And as we were talking before, I'm so excited. So I'm going to try to contain it a little bit so that I can speak intelligently to what we're doing.
Oh, I know. So, I do want to share a little bit of what we were talking about in the green room because I think there's so much value to it. And just a little backstory, and then we're going to dive into, just the whole process. But, you know, I was offered this opportunity to be a co-author, and I was able to take part of mine and like share it with somebody else. And when I put it out, you were coaching, you were in my group, you were one of my private clients, and I put it out to the group, and I think immediately you were like, I'm interested.
It's true. Yeah, I was.
Yep. And so I was like, okay. And you're like, okay, I'm interested. I want to do this. So talk to me about like, had you always wanted to write a book? Had you always wanted to publish something? Was it like on your bucket list or your life list or your things, something that you've always wanted to do?
Always. From the time that I was a little girl, I used to have notebooks. It's funny because I'm never far from like having a notebook near me. I mean, it's like I have this and then, so it's like always have notebooks and pens near me from the time that I was very little. And so I had several ideas for stories. I really love mysteries. And so I really wanted to write a mystery. And I would get like 5 pages in and I'm like, this is a lot of work. And so I'd set it aside and then come back to it later, but it was always there bubbling up in the background, like this is something I want to do. It's a dream that I have. And so this opportunity came and I'm like, I'm in because I can do a chapter. I just don't think I could do a whole book or
Yep.
didn't think I could. And maybe,
Yep.
I don't know. I'm working my way into that one.
Yep. So now we both say yes. We're like, yay, we said yes, we said yes. You know that feeling. And I'm a big fan of like you evolve suddenly. Like there's this sudden burst of like, oh, I committed to this thing. I said yes, I'm in this book. I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna write a chapter. I'm gonna write a chapter in a book. I'm gonna be a published author. We know that it's gonna be a bestseller. Like I could just feel it, right? Like, this is gonna be so exciting. And then all of a sudden,
Yes.
we both hit this thing of like, I don't know, all this resistance to writing it, to hitting the deadlines. We're having trouble with the deadlines. We're like, oh my God, I need more time. It's like August. Then it becomes September. We're like, I don't know. I scrapped it.
October.
Oh my God, I need more time. I need more time. So talk to me about like that process.
Because in my head, when I said yes back in what was it, June or July, I was like, definitely. I can hammer this out like in a month, right? Because of course it's our story. And I'm like, I know my story and I can tell this. I tell parts of it all the time. And then suddenly I'm like, I had to sit down and write it. And I'm like, this is a little different. So I felt like that little girl again who had this great idea to write this mystery book. And so it's like, and I kept like flipping through my notebook and I'm like, hmm, And so then, like you said, August like it was September and then it flowed into October. And we had a family crisis come up and I'm like, okay, so it's like I've got to get this in, and it's like I had bits and pieces of it, but it just wasn't coming together. And I'm like, okay. And so it's like I just finally sat down and I'm like, I have to do this. And so as you and I were talking, part of it was just because I was like, oh, I can't let IIyse down because she gave me this opportunity. And then the other women too, I didn't want to let them down. But in the end, it's like I'm so glad that I didn't let myself down.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And how did you decide what you were going to devote? Because when we think about redefining, right, there's so many times that we've probably redefined. Now, this is about like the entrepreneurial journey, us as women, redefining ourselves in our life. And, there's many times along this path. I mean, probably over this last year, you probably have redefined. Listen, when the pandemic came, we redefined ourselves, right?
Right.
And there's probably been several times when there's been redefining moments. How did you decide what it was that you were going to write about?
That part came really easily was figuring out because like you said, it's like we're redefining ourselves all of the time. And so for me, it's like, going from like being a career woman, like being a clinical social worker, I always thought I was the one who was going to stay in the workforce. My husband would stay home. And then it's like we kind of like that just didn't feel right. And so I had to redefine like who I was as a woman to be able to come home, leave my career, and be at home with my kids for 18 years. And I went on, and then I had to redefine myself to become a homeschool mom. And when my youngest son was graduating from high school, I'm like, that was, when you and I touched base. And, we've been on this journey together for the past year and a half. And it's like that was what was calling to me is how we define ourselves in each of the stages of our life. And what is it that for me, like what was the thread that put all of those together? And so that's how I was able to come up with what I wanted to write.
So let's dive into your chapter. So, the name of your chapter, let's talk about it. What did you write about?
So I wrote about a love legacy, and it's funny because you can't see it, but right in front of me I have this little tray of like little things, and so I have four of these little hearts, these
Mm,
rose quartz hearts, and that represents each of my children. And so I have two girls and two boys, and so they're all young adults now. And so my chapter is called A Love Legacy, and it was because of the lessons that I learned growing up. Family was everything. It's like I grew up in a very small, tight knit rural community and with a very large extended family. And so it's like, you couldn't go anywhere and do anything without somebody in the family knowing. So, but it's like what I learned through that is what's taken me through my life. It's like what helped me to determine what I was going to do, like what my major in college was going to be, and then what my career was, and then how I wanted my family to be, and how I've defined that, what family meant to me. And that was all from like growing up in this really amazing family,
mm,
just what family means and how you show up for one another and how you work through things and how like that is it's your foundation and also your springboard into what it is that you want to do next.
yeah. And, knowing you in the entrepreneurial space, because this is where we met, it
Right.
is your legacy. That is truly what part of what you're known for is this woman that shows up supportive, caring, kind, loving, um, and such a powerful force of being able to really help people do exactly what you've done in your own family, bring that into other families. Like that same foundational structure of love, a legacy of love.
Yes, and it's like it's interesting because it's like it ripples out. And so there's a really wonderful gentleman here on LinkedIn, and one of the things he talked about was the other day that he another connection he had made was telling him they had done like a podcast, and so he was telling him about how his father had just died like a couple days before, and so his this man who was doing the podcast was telling this other connection how much he had learned from his father and how that then touched the connection that I have with this man. So he was sharing it with all of the LinkedIn community, and he said, you know what, that's legacy. That's legacy. When you can take the things that you've learned and put that filter of love on it and then share that with someone else, it ripples out. And that's the legacy I received, and that's the legacy that I'm now passing on to other people. Like
Yeah.
to know that you have that foundation, that it can be stable and your home can be peaceful, and how important that is, especially in today's times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, 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 love that you've taken the very thing that where you came from, where you are now, and where you're going. There's this common thread of
Yeah.
love, devotion, loyalty, communication, commitment, all of these things. And that is the very thread that runs through who you are, and what you do in the world today.
Yes, and it's interesting. It wasn't until I wrote that chapter that it really came to light that that is the thread. It's like showing up as me in the world, because at first I was like, what do I have to share? And that, you and I were talking about that previously, and we've had conversations like this throughout the past year and a half, that, what is it that I have to share? And you have reminded me throughout, I have everything to share. And it's like, and as I was writing that chapter, it just can't, it really, yes, it's like this is who I am, and I'm so thankful that, I have that strong foundation that I would have been able to do that. It's like my, and this story, and I'll share it here, that when it's been a year ago now that everything shut down. And so my sons came home from college and they brought people with them.
Of course they did.
Yes, it's like kids who couldn't make it home, their families couldn't come to get them, and so they came to our home. And so we, at that point, it's like we had, I'm counting, like probably 9 people in our home, and it's like the pandemic, everything's shutting down. It's like we're going to the grocery store trying to feed like 4 grown young men. And it's like we're trying to keep it all together. And it's like we're going to the grocery store and there's like no food.
Yeah, I remember
And
trying to find a place to like hide out in your house, because you had so many
yes.
grown people, right? Because of course everybody wanted to come to the Love House, it was like,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yes. And so it's like, and so I was like reminding myself of, like, okay, lead in love. And so it's like one of my sons at one point had said to me, he's like, you're not quite yourself. And I'm like, well, it's a pandemic. And it's like, and he hadn't been out of the house though, so he wasn't going out and seeing what the stores looked like with all the empty shelves and things. And so I really, it took me back to like that foundation, that this is who I am and this is how I want to be in the world, and so it's like, and that helped to like settle me. Now I have to say, yes, I was hiding out in my room quite a bit and, doing lives from my bedroom floor. Um, but I'm so thankful that my kids feel like they can bring their friends here,
yeah,
that they want to be here, that they feel like we have something to give.
yeah, that it's the harbor. It's the harbor in
Hmm.
the storm. And that you've become the lighthouse for
Right.
so many people. And the way that you show up in the world and the messages that you have and the way that you're really, really helping, the guidance that you provide for families, for mothers, for fathers, for caretakers, whoever they may be, to to really offer that guidance for to enhance to the betterment of communication, for deepening the love and understanding, for closeness and connection in the family, and to reduce the chaos and confusion, all of those things. And it's because this is who you are.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because it is who I am. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that it's not always easy and it doesn't look pretty. It is chaotic, and love love gets you in the door, at least, you know what I mean? And so it's a constant conversation that you're having to have with yourself about, where do I go from here? For me, growing up, I grew up in a home where my mother had a mental illness, and so, and she had several health issues. And that's one of the things that I bring up in the book, is that really impacted me deeply, because I was very sensitive. Excuse me, I'm going to itch my nose because it gets itchy whenever I'm on live. But, it impacted me so deeply that, it's like I was always in tune to my environment.
Mhm.
And I did that because, I wanted to make sure that all my people were okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like that, I've taken that into, like, everything that I've done, whether it was as a school social worker, then into my own family. And now I do that with other families too, is
Mhm.
helping them to really look at, first of all, maybe some of those messages that we do take that aren't helpful from growing up. There are some things that we can set those burdens aside, and it is a burden. We have our bags packed pretty heavily sometimes from, what happened when we were growing up. And that's what I really want parents to think about now, is that it's okay that you don't like your kids sometimes, quite honestly. It's like, I didn't love my kid. I always loved my kids, but there were many, many times that I didn't like them. And I was the one who was on the floor in a meltdown. um, you
Yeah,
know, um, and that's okay, because we also want to be real,
absolutely.
that it's not always this love fest, you
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah. I think the willingness and the vulnerability to talk about, being raised with a mother that had a mental illness, and carrying, the weight of that, carrying the burden of that, and realizing, like how, the impact that that had, and also the empathetic and compassionate woman that really, it explains so much of the heart that you have, and the love that you have, and the sensitivity that you have, because you had an eye on mom. Is mom okay? Is everything okay? Am
Mhm.
I okay? Is everything okay? It really sort of puts you in a place of really being a heightened sense of awareness. Is everything okay?
Yes. And that's the part that, it's like I've had to do some work around, um, because we've done this work together, through one of your courses, and just throughout, you're so talented and gifted at drawing that out. But that's something that I've been working on for years too, is recognizing that it doesn't all fall to me either.
Right.
And so that's the other message that I like to give to parents, is that, and this is what comes out in the book, is that, I don't have to carry all of that. It's like, I, part of what I'm doing is I'm teaching my children, and I've taught my children, part of that legacy is resilience, that we can go through hard times, and we have what it takes in us to be able to do the hard things, and to make good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's something so freeing about realizing, you know, that our parents came to this life to do live their life, and we came to live our life, and our kids came to live their lives, and they're always redefining themselves. We're redefining ourselves, they're redefining themselves. So we're all doing this dance at the same time, right? Like we're kind of, you went from working to staying at home to becoming an online entrepreneur. Like your kids are witnessing this, right? Like they're young adults that are in school and finding their way. And it's like, okay, now wait. What's mom doing? What's Mama Mindy doing?
Yeah, it's like it's interesting because I told my youngest son, and so he was just so excited, and so he's like telling all of his friends, and he's, you know, my my younger daughter is actually she works at our local library for county, and so she had sent me a link so that I can even put our book it requests that our book be put into the library system so that, it's like the county where my kids have grown up, where I've lived for the past 20 some years. It's like the people, the community that I have, they're going to read this, and know that it's possible for them to redefine themselves too. It's that we take on many roles in our life,
So
and
so great. I
yeah.
I love that. And you know what I love about it is that a lot of times in the online space and people that I work with, oftentimes it's like there's such amazing people. They're so talented and like putting themselves out there. A lot of times the people that they're most afraid of is their family and their loved ones. And I love that your family is like, look what my mom's doing, right? Like, check out my mom, right? Like, it's so awesome. It's a legacy of love.
It really is. And the other piece of that too is like with the family is that it's not, I mean, a good chunk of this is my story, but also, the growing up years belongs to my sister too. And so that was one of the things that as I was going to write about that portion of it, that I really wanted to talk to her too and say, are you okay with this? Because I want to honor where she is and that this part of this journey has been with her, so and I think that she really appreciated that because I was giving her the opportunity to say yes or no. And
Yeah.
if she had said no, then I would have changed that portion. Not changed it, but I may not have included some of that. But I wanted her to be prepared as well, that I wanted to share this.
Yeah. And
And
that,
it's for us.
yeah. And that's kind of a tricky thing when you're writing because you're writing your story, right? But if your
Mhm.
story includes other people, how do you navigate that? So I love that you reached out and said, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing. And, how do you feel? Are you okay with that? Or, because that is a little bit of a slippery slope. And so I love the way that you navigated that. I think that that's beautiful. I love that. I love it. So what is Mindy up to now? Where are you now? What's happening? What are you doing? What are you offering? How do people find you? How do they work with you? What are you doing?
So, since the book is coming out now, and we have our official launch March 10th, and it's opening a lot of doorways. And so, I'm on a couple of different podcasts coming up in April that have come to me through this. I have a couple of speaking engagements coming up, and so it's like I'm finding that as I've opened myself up to this opportunity that new opportunities are coming up as well. So I will, if you're on LinkedIn, you're welcome to send a connection request because I always love to keep in touch and engage in good content.
Yeah.
Um,
This is
but
also streaming on Facebook right now.
oh
So
yes, and Facebook too. I'm on Facebook as well, and so yes, I love those connections. Those are really important because the pillars for me are connection and community, and that leading through with kindness. And so those are really important to me. So you can find me on any of those I'm pretty much everywhere on LinkedIn and also Facebook. And so what I'm working on too is that I have a signature program that I had been, as you may remember, it's called The Care and Keeping of You. And so this is really my part of my love legacy, of helping parents, navigate the world that we live in now. And so we're looking at really taking excellent care of themselves and unpacking their bags, so that they're not over stressed and overburdened. We live in a world that wants us to be that way.
Excellent.
And if we can do that then and take care of ourselves, then that ripples out to our children, and that's part of our legacy as well. Um,
Is that individual? Is that an individual program or is that group coaching?
it's an individual program. It's individual coaching, and that's really where my heart lies, because I think that there's so much that we can dig into, and sometimes I think that the world is a really noisy place, and so if you have a place that you can just go and say, "Hey, this is what's going on," so I just want to make it easy for people to work with me.
Totally. I love that. Especially in the parenting space, to have your person that you can go to and just not deeply analyze, but just be there for you and just really help you kind of ground into yourself and kind of build you up and revitalize and give you a lot of really solid tools to for connection and communication. And I happen to know your program and I know how stellar it is. I think is fantastic. I love the one. I personally really love one-on-one. I think it's just like you said, it could be a very noisy place, the world and the pace, and having your person could really just be such a game changer. So I think I know the work you do. And so if you are a harried, feel very kind of overwhelmed, and you know what, reaching out for help, no matter what it is, whether it's weight loss, parenting, coaching, business coaching, life coaching, grief coaching, whatever it is, finding your person and taking that step is really an act of true love, your own love legacy, to say, I'm gonna do this. I was just in a peer mastermind, and one of the men in there was saying that a woman just invested with him, and she was like, you know what? She was having a moment with herself, and she's like, you know what? Wasn't even really talking to him. She's like, I'm going to do this. You know what? I've been pouring myself into other people my whole life. And you know what? It's my turn. I'm going to do this. And he was like, he wasn't sure if he should like interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, yeah, do it. And it's the same, especially for parents, a lot of single parents or both parents working, and you've got a couple kids and them doing the hybrid school. It's a lot. It's a lot. And to have somebody like you that's an expert in the way that you are, it's such a gift. Such a gift.
Well, and that's really what I want to give parents is, and I say parents because I think that dads, sometimes are overlooked as well, because they're giving as much as they possibly can too, and they're fighting stereotypes, about like what it means to be like a man and to also go through these different, they're going through the same journey as well, as their wives and the moms, and I think that they're not getting sometimes the support that they need, because as much as it sometimes it seems taboo for women to reach out, and ask for support, and accept that help. I think it's men go through that too.
Yeah.
And I think for my husband, it's like we were fortunate that he had a few mentors that were just a little bit ahead and a little bit older than us. And so he was able to glean from them what he needed. Um, but I have to say, for me, like with my friends, it's like oftentimes we were kind of like, we were just kind of like all complaining about what was going on, and it's like, and so I think that that's the difference between talking to your friends too and having a coach, is that you have someone who you know doesn't enter into that as much, because it's not a free for all.
Absolutely.
In terms of that.
Good point. A father could reach out to you and hire you as their like a single father, or even parents. So you work with the mother,
Together.
you work with the parents, you work with the father, You work
Hmm.
with grandparents or a
Yeah.
caretaker of children. So, wow, that's amazing. Awesome, awesome. So people can they can connect with you on Instagram. I'm sure you're on Clubhouse. You're on Clubhouse, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook. Mindy's everywhere. So, and she's got such valuable, amazing content. So make sure that you reach out to her, connect with her. Her chapter is really beautiful. I have not made all of my way all the way through. I'm like disciplining myself to read every single chapter. I really want to get to know everybody that's in the book because I haven't yet, and I really want to know everybody in the book. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing more of your journey and just more of yourself. I just love and adore you.
Oh, thank you, Elise, and the same to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us. Hashtag love when you watch this on the replay, and we'll see you again really soon. Ciao.